So what I want to do over the next couple of minutes is just try to wrap up our presentation of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And so we've been through moral virtue and intellectual virtue and friendship at this point. And so coming into Book 10, I just want to focus on the wrap up and in particular, the way Aristotle is going to come back and answer really the main central question, give it its most complete answer. Remember that this has been a book about how to live your very best life, how to live the very best human life possible. And now you'll remember that at the beginning of the book, back in Book 1, Chapter 5, Aristotle had said that there were three major candidates for the good life. And there he talks about pleasure, the political, and the contemplative life. Now, types of life in this sense should be taken to mean lives lived primarily in pursuit of a certain goal. So obviously the political life is not only politics, the contemplative life not only political, the life of pleasure not only pleasure, but it's really kind of about what is your very top priority. Now, notice that Aristotle dismisses what he calls the life of money making. That would be a life devoted to amassing fortune. That's the goal of that life. And he dismisses this as a slavish life, undertaken only under compulsion. And again, what he means by this is we don't desire money for its own sake. We desire money for the things that it will buy for us. And if we didn't need those things, we wouldn't bother going out to make money. So A, we go out to make money because we have to. And B, money is only a means to an end. It's not our ultimate end or goal. So these three candidates for the good life, Aristotle calls them the life of enjoyment, the political life, and the contemplative life. And so, of course, each of them will have its own particular focus or goal or priority. The life of enjoyment would be a life that seeks pleasure above all else. So call this a hedonistic life. Now, the political life, Aristotle tells us, seems to be in pursuit of honor, but here it seems more accurate to say that this is a life lived in pursuit of moral virtue out in the world, right? Excellence that other people can see. You are living up to that potential out in public where people honor you for your great deeds. And likewise, the contemplative life is therefore lived in pursuit of the intellectual virtues. It's a life of higher contemplation. Call this the philosopher's life. Now, we've seen again and again that Aristotle will say that the life of pleasure is not true human happiness. And of course, as you've seen, Book 10 opens with this lengthy return to the discussion of pleasure. At the end of the day, a life lived in pursuit of enjoyment is an animal's life. But the fact that we can connect a type of life with a type of good is useful because it can help us to see our true highest possible aim. So recall back in Book 1, Chapter 7, those three layers or levels or aspects of the soul that we laid out. That plant-like aspect of my life, in order to be alive, have to take in nutrition and grow. That animal-like aspect of my life, I also have perception of my environment and of myself. And of course, the rational element that sets us apart from all animals. If each of these types of life is an activity, then each one has a good associated with it, a goal, a priority. And so what that means is this is what it means to do that activity well. So, of course, we've already indicated this much in our comments on pleasures and spending your life comatose. They are the successful versions of the animal and plant activities, right? So a life of pleasure, as I keep saying, is the best life possible for an animal, but that really is just pursuing or prioritizing the animal aspect of ourselves. And likewise, you can be still successfully alive in a coma, but you are your good life, the only possible good to pursue is the life of a plant, right? Just continuing to be alive. So this life of enjoyment, then, is a successful life of perception, the best kind of animal life. And again, that's why Aristotle keeps dismissing it. He says in Book 10, Chapter 5, each animal is thought to have a proper pleasure, and it has a proper function, namely that which corresponds to its activity. And so the life of pleasure is not the proper good for humans, Our activity is rational, and so too must our good be. But there are, of course, two kinds of rational activity and two corresponding good lives. A life that puts the moral virtues at the forefront will be a life of achievement in the world, a life of virtue and honor. As we accomplish great things, master our bodies and environment, and impress others with our skills. This is what Aristotle refers to as the political life. And a life that puts the intellectual virtues at the forefront will be a contemplative life, a life lived in the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, a life of expanding our rational capacities to the utmost. Now, I think it's worth recognizing that Aristotle has serious respect for both the political life and the contemplative life. These are both lives of human virtue. But he will end Nicomachean Ethics by arguing that the contemplative life is ultimately better than the political life for those who can manage it. Now, not everyone can devote themselves to a life of research, scholarship, learning, and discussion, but ultimately this will be the very, very best possible kind of human life, and he's going to give us several reasons for preferring this to the political life. First, if reason is the best or highest part of us, and the best, highest happiness will correspond with our best, highest activity. So the moral virtues tie reason in with the body, while the intellectual virtues are more completely rational. Hence, they are higher and purer. The contemplative life most fully corresponds with what is the very best in us. In Book 10, Chapter 7, Aristotle even says that reason is what is most divine in us, and the intellectual life is a pursuit of immortality. If reason is divine, then, in comparison with man, he says, the life according to it is divine in comparison with human life. Now recall that if happiness is an activity, then we want to do that activity as much as possible for as long as possible. And the intellectual virtues can be active and sustained for longer periods of time than the moral virtues. So, think about being very, very good at soccer, for example. How long can you keep playing soccer very, very well? At any given time, perhaps a few hours at the most. And in your life, until you reach late middle age, perhaps. But now think about the life of scholarship and discussion. This is something you can do for many hours on end, once you get accustomed to it, of course. And it's something that you can continue to do well into your golden years. So, how many authors continue to write great books in old age versus how many professional athletes continue to play professionally well into old age? Furthermore, he says the intellectual virtues are more self-sufficient than the moral virtues. Having people to discuss your ideas with is great, but you can also read, think, write, and learn on your own. Some of the moral virtues are things you can practice on your own, like eating and exercise and patience, but most of them require other people, being courageous or generous or justice, for example. And finally, while we pursue virtue overall for its own sake, and we pursue happiness for its own sake, the moral virtues are still mostly developed out of necessity. So Aristotle gives the example of bravery and military skill in war. We don't make war for fun or in our leisure time. Rather, we fight wars because we have to, and then we find ways to be our best selves in these situations. Now, by contrast, learning, study, wisdom, and contemplation is something that we can, and that many people do, pursue for its own sake. And those who choose to become scholars, who choose to lead the contemplative life, choose it for its own sake, not out of necessity. So intellectual virtue is more free and more done for its own sake, making it most fully happiness. The very best human life, then, is one in which we master the moral virtues in order to develop the concentration and stability to pursue the intellectual virtues. And the very best humans, leading the very best human lives, will spend their lives developing their minds to the greatest possible extent. The contemplative life is the very highest and best human happiness possible. So this, then, is Aristotle's ultimate answer to the question we asked at the beginning of the book. What is true human happiness, and how do we get it?